I think I left my notes on the bed back at Wayne's place, or else his little Chihuahua, Cheech, ate it. I don't know, but anyways, I'm just blaming the dog. But so I'm sort of kind of winging it here tonight. But thank you very much. Your Grace, wonderful to have a meal with you, and Mother Superior Maureen, I'd love to It's just a real pleasure to be here in BC, and to see this wonderful, to witness this great community of people. A short story, I hope it's short. My favorite story is from Scott Peck's book. It's about, and it's maybe a true story or maybe it's a myth. It might be 200 years old, it might be 25 years old. But it's about a monastery in the forest, a beautiful forest, but the monastery is becoming decrepit and derelict. There's only 5 monks left in the monastery. There's the abbot and 4 monks. They're all over 70. Me and Wayne. And they're becoming despair. What's going to happen? The novices aren't coming. How to keep this going? And periodically the rabbi from the community would come and spend a few days in meditation in a cabin in the woods. And somehow the monks knew when he was there. And the abbot thought to himself, maybe I should go and talk with him to see how we can rejuvenate our monastery, or it's going to die. So he went out to see the abbot, and they greeted one another warmly. They were friends for many years. And he explained the problem. He says, our monastery, our order is dying. Do you have anything to suggest on how we can rejuvenate this? And the rabbi said, oh, we have the same problem. No one's coming to the synagogues anymore. We're losing numbers. And so they wept together, and they read the Torah together, and they prayed together. He stayed for a couple of days, and as they were saying goodbye, he said, are you sure, the abbot said to the rabbi, are you sure that you don't have anything you could say to help us? He says, oh no, I have no answers for you. I just know, though, that one of you is the Messiah. So the abbot went back to the brothers, and they asked him, did he have anything to help us? And no, he had nothing to offer us, but he said something strange. He said that one of us is the Messiah. And so the brothers in the community, they let that sink in, and they thought about that. And they thought, maybe it's the abbot. Maybe he could surely, with all his wise leadership he's given, that he would be the Messiah. Or maybe it's Brother Wayne, because he's a scholar. He knows the scriptures. He brings such light wherever he goes. Or well, then again, maybe it's Sister Maureen. I mean, she can be bossy. She can get on your nerves, but she gets things done. She's a myth. Or surely he couldn't mean me. Not me. I screwed up in town. I came out to the monastery to get away and to find refuge. He couldn't mean me. Lord, I can't mean that much to you, can I? And so they let us sink in more. And something happened. Quietly, people began to treat one another with a different kind of way. They began to have more respect. There was more grace in their conversations. And sometimes families from the town would come out and they would picnic in the forest. It was very beautiful. And sort of quietly people began to notice this gentle transformation among the community. And soon some young men came and they picnicked and they wanted to get closer to the monks. And they asked to join the novices, to become novices, to join the monastery. And over time this became a flourishing and healthy community again. story, as I thought of what CoSA is. The Archbishop said that, and he addressed it particularly to those of you who are core members of the group, that you are an enormous blessing. And that's basically the point that I would want to say and to give to you. That you are a tremendous gift to us, who are part of your circles, who are in the community. You are a great gift. Even though you may not feel that, surely I mean that much to you. But I want to offer to you, from my experience over these last few years, that you're a great gift. You change us. And I want to say thank you. You change us. We couldn't do it without the support of the professionals who are here, the chaplains and the social workers and the bureaucrats who are in the system who make things happen and allow the access and so on. We couldn't do it without the sponsors who walk with us. But to you guys and you gals, to claim that you are the truth, that you're a child of God. And you transform us. So in 1994, Charlie came out of prison, Charlie Taylor. And I had known him previously because I worked with M2W2. And he came out this time after the fourth time for adult sentences for offending against boys in the age range between 8 and 12. That's the age range in which he himself had been violated when he was thrown away in a regional treatment center at Huronia, which was a terrible place. And he would run away and they'd bring him back and run away. His family had given up on him when he was just young and threw him away. He had a brother who was killed in Kingston Penitentiary. He suffered enormous anguish. In 1994, he was finishing a 7-year sentence. And he was coming back to the community when a psychologist in the prison, who we had worked closely with, Bill Palmer, called and said, "Do you think we could put Charlie on a Mennonite farm somewhere just to get him out of the downtown Toronto where he was living, healthy place where he wouldn't be around. The temptations were not so great, the stresses and the loneliness." So we tried. But Mennonite farmers aren't stupid. They're not going to let some guy who's never driven a car drive a $500,000 combine or whatever they cost, more than that now, I guess some of you would say. And that just didn't fly. We looked at other alternatives, but there was nowhere else. And I remember saying to Bill, what if we were to create a circle of support for him in Hamilton, where I was the minister of a small community church and community center. There was a rehab center there, a couple of psychologists who were working with fellows who'd come back. And I asked our folks in the church and some people from outside, and I said, I'd like to call a circle together. Would you be willing to help? We'll call it Charlie's Angels. And we had people step forward. We had half a dozen people step forward. But when Charlie came out, the laws had changed from the time when I had been with M2W2. I had to go in to see the police in the Hamilton district because they received a package, right? You know the drill. And they said, we don't want him here. We want him to go to Waterdown, which is about 15 minutes away. They had been burned a little while, but we feel that he's going to reoffend again. We're going to wear it. So when the day he came out, June 22nd, 1994, he was asked to come to court. He had to fill a cognizance, an 810 order, one of the first ones in Ontario. And then in a couple of days, the newspapers got a hold of this, and he was front page news for two or 3 days. And those of us who were helping him, we were there too in the front page. And the police decided to put out a pamphlet, 8.5 by 11 pamphlet, and they had Charlie's picture and his record, all the offenses he had done. And they put it on the desk of every school child in the elementary system in Hamilton Wentworth, notifying him and warning him. It landed on my son's desk. He was 8 at the time, in grade 3. And Matthew said, I know him. He was at our place for supper last night. Which is true. We'd had a barbecue at our place, and my dad was there, and Bill had brought him back from Workworth, and we had a little barbecue outside with a few friends. And when Shirley went to pick Matt up at school, there was a bunch of kids around him, and oh boy. And I thought for sure that we were going to have to leave Hamilton, because the police felt that within a month, they had taken him off these chemical castration drugs, that he was going to reoffend. And the police put him under 24-hour surveillance. Major crime unit detectives, front and back in his house. It was a bit like Beverly Hills Cop, because Charlie, he would brew up some coffee, and he would go out and try to get them to drink coffee. And they were giving surveillance, and everywhere we went, he would follow. They would follow. I'd take him to a barber. First of all, he'd try to find a barber to cut the man's hair who has demonized in the press. Take him to a doctor, the police would follow him to the doctor's office. So for 6 weeks, this happened, until finally the police felt that things could be calmed down now. And I remember the detective sergeant, the lovely guy, Bob Maxwell, who's since died. He came up to me one day and he said, "You know what this is costing us? The major crime units? We spent $350,000 in that 6 weeks. That was $1994. And I thought, holy crow, what could we do with $350,000? We could have social workers around the clock, so just outside his head. But Charlie gradually fit in. No, he had crisis. People would run from him. Taxi driver come to pick him up, and they'd see him. He says, "Not you," and he'd drive off. He was a despised person in the city. But we met with him all the time. We met with him regularly, and we tried to navigate through this and advocate for him. A guy in our church had an apartment that allowed him to stay there. And issues cropped up. This is why service is so important. I remember getting a call at 11 o'clock at night. And Charlie was frantic because we had a cat for him. We got him a cat named Rainbow. And I think he had kept the cat down the stairs. I don't know what happened, but it was a long flight of stairs into his second floor flat. And the cat, he felt, was really badly damaged. Now, the social service offices were closed at 11 o'clock at night. Who's he going to call? Crises don't happen between 9 and 5 often. That's when we need circles. We need a circle that's like a family, that was able to be responsive to this sort of very real human needs. I remember going there, and I saw Ken, and he was breathing hard, and Charlie was a big guy too, 300 pounds. And I said, "Let Rainbow go. I think he'll be okay." And Rainbow looked up at me and crawled under the table, and Charlie was holding on to him so tightly. It's the human things. What happens when you need to negotiate with a landlord? Another time when I got a real glimpse of what Charlie had been through, and his deep loneliness and his pain. One day I pulled up in front of his place, and the police were there. I just happened to be there. The police were in the doorway of the building. And they were there with staff from the Children's Aid Society, who had come to believe that Charlie was grooming the young son of the single mom on the basement apartment, or the bottom floor apartment. And they were there with an order that she had to move, or they were going to take custody of the boy. And I knew this was going to be terribly distressing to Charlie. And I said to the officer, the detective, I said, who's going to tell him? Because he was just above. "Do you want to tell him?" "I think it's better if I tell him," I said. So I waited till they had taken the mom and the son away, and the place was empty, and I went upstairs. "Charlie, I knew this was terribly hard for him." And I sort of situated myself near his back steps that went down from the second floor apartment. "Charlie, the police are here. And they've taken away the family downstairs because they are concerned that he's at risk." And he just melted. And he came staggering toward me. I didn't know what was going to do. And he just put his arms around me, and he sobbed, and he said, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus." All that anguish. We got him another apartment. He got an apartment in a handicapped, accessible place with seniors and no kids around. He had lost his leg because of terrible circulation. And he was sitting in the apartment. It was a very nice place. And he loved to watch cartoons on his TV. Sometimes the people in the apartment building complained because he would be too loud watching these Roadrunner and Coyote TV. "Look out behind you! He's right behind you," he would say. But he lived there, and he managed, and he created friends. Now he wasn't totally crime-free. If he needed a pork chop or a steak, he had this scooter that could easily accommodate that. He got barred from No Frills, and he got barred from a couple of others. But he lived 12 years, and there was never another charge of sexual offending. And 3 months after we had started with Charlie in Hamilton, the group of our people, Hugh Kierkegaard and Evan Heisey and others in Toronto around the Holy Trinity Church formed a second circle around Ray Boudreau. And Ray Boudreau lived 14 years without reoffending again. And the man had been on the front page of the Maclean's magazine because of his criminal record. He lived 14 years, and even long after his warrant expiry, he continued to take his Lupron because he never wanted to hurt another kid. And then 12 years after Charlie was out, he always would come to our place at Christmas time and have dinner with us and our family. And he didn't show up. And so the day after Christmas, I went over to his place and pushed open the door. He never locked his door. And there he was on the floor. He had been dead. He had died on Christmas Day, and the remote to his TV was right beside him. Cartoons were on the TV. Well, why do I say that Charlie has been such a gift to me? The core members of a gift. I never liked Charlie at the beginning. Right? He was a pain in the ass, really, he was. And called and talk and so on. Needed this and that and so on and sometimes. But I grew to love him. And when he had his leg amputated and he was in the hospital, this guy who the community had despised, he would run around in his electric scooter there, in his electric wheelchair, and he had a little puppet on the control stick, He'd go around and help people make out their menus on the ward that he was in, or he'd sit in the lobby, And people gravitated to him. Charlie had a wonderfully great smile. In 2001, I came back home because I had been with my dad, my brother and sister. My dad died early that morning. He was sick all night and I was exhausted. I had a nap, and I said to Shirley, I'd like to see Charlie. So we were close to the hospital, and I went over there, and here he was in the lobby with his scooter, with his little puppet and so on. He said, "How's your dad?" Because Dad always asked about Charlie. He'd been there at the barbecue. I said, "Charlie, he died last night." He didn't say anything. He just put out his great big arms, and he just held me. And he held me. Charlie, who had never had a father who loved him, loved me when I lost my dad. I don't know why. I think there's something about the deep suffering of those of us who have been through the prison system and who have been fatherless that is very close to the heart of God. And if I was a rabbi tonight, And I had a yarmulke that I could put on my head, you know, and come here. And this is a head that could use a yarmulke. This is what I would say to you. I said, the Messiah is among you. The Messiah lives within CoSA. You embody the Spirit of the Lord, who said that the Spirit of God is upon me to proclaim good news to the poor, release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free. You carry that. And you transform us by your courage, and by your vulnerability, and by your love, and by your tenderness. You make faith real to us. And I bless you and thank you. God bless you here in CoSA, BC.